The merciless sun beat down on the Apache desert, where only the strongest survived. Eagle Eye, a respected warrior of the Apache tribe, paused atop a ridge. Below him, a small figure struggled along the dusty path. A young boy, no more than 7 summers old, dragged a heavy sack across the parched earth. Tears carved clean tracks down his dirt-stained face. The warrior watched, puzzled by the sight of a lone child in this unforgiving wilderness. Something wasn't right. The boy's clothes were torn, his movements desperate. Eagle Eye's hand moved instinctively to his knife. What tragedy had befallen this child, and would helping him betray everything the Apache had sworn to protect? What devastating secret would he find hidden among the wood in that heavy sack? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Eagle Eye descended the ridge with practiced silence, moving from shadow to shadow. The boy had not noticed him yet. Each step brought Eagle Eye closer to a decision he could not undo. His chief had sent him to scout for Comanche movements, not to rescue lost children. The boy stumbled, falling to his knees. He did not rise again. Instead, his small shoulders shook with silent sobs as he clutched the mysterious sack. Eagle Eye approached cautiously, aware that even a child might carry a weapon in these dangerous times. "Water," the boy whispered in broken Spanish when he finally noticed the warrior's shadow. His cracked lips told the story of hours without drink. "Por favor." Eagle Eye untied the water pouch from his belt. The boy's eyes widened at the sight of the Apache's traditional dress and the knife at his waist. Fear replaced thirst as he tried to scramble backward. "Drink," Eagle Eye said in Spanish, one of the 3 languages he spoke besides Apache. He had learned it from Mexican traders who sometimes visited their camps. "I will not harm you." The boy hesitated, then reached for the pouch with trembling hands. As he drank, Eagle Eye noticed a broken clay vessel tied to the sack with a frayed rope. Once a water carrier, now shattered, much like the boy himself. "What is your name?" Eagle Eye asked after the boy had drunk his fill. "Thomas," the boy replied, his voice stronger but still wary. "My pa called me Tom." Eagle Eye nodded. "I am called Eagle Eye." Thomas wiped his mouth with a dirty sleeve. "Are you going to scalp me?" Pa said Apaches take scalps. Eagle Eye's face remained impassive, though the question stirred something inside him. "I take no scalps from children who have done no wrong." The boy glanced at his precious sack. "I need to keep going. To the fort." Eagle Eye studied the western horizon. "Fort Buchanan? It is 3 days' walk." He pointed to the boy's blistered feet. "You will not make it alone." Thomas tried to stand but swayed dangerously. The heat and exhaustion had taken their toll. Eagle Eye caught him before he collapsed again. The warrior looked back toward his tribal lands, then down at the unconscious boy in his arms. His orders had been clear: scout and return with information. But as he held the small, broken child, memories of his own son, taken by fever 2 winters past, clouded his thoughts. Eagle Eye examined the sack, while Thomas slept. It was oddly shaped for firewood. He loosened the binding and peered inside, expecting to find kindling. Instead, he discovered items carefully wrapped in a tattered blanket, broken pieces of a wooden picture frame, a child's shirt, a woman's brush with blonde hairs still caught in the bristles. These were not firewood, they were memories. Thomas stirred, and Eagle Eye quickly retied the sack. The boy was running from something terrible. The warrior had seen enough death to recognize its shadow in one so young. "We will rest until the sun begins its descent," Eagle Eye decided, speaking to himself in Apache. "Then we travel." He fashioned a small shelter from his deerskin travel blanket, providing shade for the sleeping boy. As Thomas rested, Eagle Eye contemplated the broken clay vessel. Once it had carried water, the essence of life. Now it was fractured beyond repair, yet the boy had kept it, tied it to his precious bundle. Some things, once broken, could never be restored to their original form, but perhaps they could still serve a purpose. Eagle Eye touched the medicine pouch at his neck and whispered a prayer to the spirits for guidance. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the boy would die without his help. Thomas woke with a start, hands instinctively reaching for his sack. Finding it beside him, he relaxed slightly, then tensed again upon seeing Eagle Eye crouched nearby. "You are safe," Eagle Eye said. "The sun begins to set. Soon we travel." "Why are you helping me?" Thomas asked, suspicion lacing his young voice. Eagle Eye offered dried meat from his provisions. Even enemies should not die of thirst in the desert. "Pa said not to trust Indians," Thomas said, but took the food anyway, hunger overcoming caution. "Your father was wise to be careful," Eagle Eye replied. "But not all Apache are the same, just as not all white men are the same." As Thomas ate, Eagle Eye pointed to the broken clay vessel. This was important to carry. The boy's eyes filled with tears. "Ma's water jug. She always kept flowers in it." He swallowed hard. "They broke everything." "Who broke everything?" Eagle Eye asked gently. Thomas stared at the ground. "Indians. Not like you. Different. They had painted faces, and—" He made a gesture across his head. "Mohawk," Eagle Eye said grimly. "Comanche." Thomas nodded. "They came at dawn. Pa tried to fight. His voice broke. I was hiding in the root cellar. Ma pushed me in and closed the door." Eagle Eye understood now. "And after?" "I heard screaming, then fire, then nothing." Thomas clutched his sack tighter. "When it was quiet, I came out. Everything was burning. Everyone was." He couldn't finish. "So you took what remained and began walking," Eagle Eye completed for him. Thomas nodded. "The fort was where Pa said to go if trouble came." Eagle Eye gestured toward the sack. "May I see what you saved?" After a moment's hesitation, Thomas untied the sack and carefully removed its contents. A charred wooden frame containing a family portrait, partially burned but still showing a man, woman, and Thomas. A woman's hairbrush, a small carved horse, a tattered quilt, a Bible with singed edges, and wrapped in a child's shirt, several pieces of broken pottery. "All that is left," Thomas whispered. Eagle Eye examined the portrait. Despite the damage, he could see Thomas had his mother's eyes and his father's strong chin. The man looked kind but determined. The woman's smile spoke of gentleness. "Your father was brave," Eagle Eye said, "to face warriors to protect his family." Thomas's fingers traced his father's face in the portrait. "They killed him first. I heard him fighting." Eagle Eye nodded respectfully. "A warrior's death." "Why did they do it?" Thomas asked, the question that had surely haunted his every step. Eagle Eye considered his answer carefully. "Some men choose violence. Apache, Comanche, white men, all have those who kill without honor." He pointed to the portrait. "Remember them as they were, not how they died." As Thomas carefully repacked his treasures, Eagle Eye noticed something else, a silver locket hidden among the items. Thomas quickly tucked it away, not explaining its presence. Eagle Eye pretended not to notice, but his warrior instinct sensed importance in the boy's secretive handling of the object. Perhaps there was more to this raid than simple violence. "We will travel now," Eagle Eye said. "I know paths the Comanche do not." "Where are we going?" Thomas asked. "First, away from here," Eagle Eye replied. "This place is not safe. Comanche may still hunt." "Hunt what?" Eagle Eye looked meaningfully at the sack. Perhaps they did not find what they sought. Fear flickered across Thomas's face, confirming Eagle Eye's suspicion. The boy knew something or had something the raiders wanted. This was no random attack. "Trust me," Eagle Eye said, helping Thomas to his feet. "I will keep you safe." As they set out into the desert twilight, Eagle Eye felt the weight of his decision. He had chosen to help this boy, to delay his mission and perhaps bring danger to his people. The spirits would judge whether his choice was wise. They traveled through the night, Eagle Eye setting a pace Thomas could maintain. The moon provided enough light to navigate the familiar terrain. By dawn, Thomas was stumbling with exhaustion. "Rest now," Eagle Eye said, guiding the boy to a sheltered overhang. Thomas collapsed, shivering despite the growing heat. Eagle Eye touched the boy's forehead and frowned at the unnatural warmth. Fever had taken hold. Eagle Eye removed the medicine pouch from around his neck. The small leather bag contained herbs, minerals, and items of spiritual significance passed down from his father and his father's father before him. Every Apache warrior carried such medicine, but Eagle Eye's was known for its power. His grandfather had been a respected medicine man. The decision weighed heavily. Eagle Eye had been sent to gather information about Comanche movements, information that could protect his people. Each hour away from that mission put his tribe at risk. Yet, the boy would die without help. As if sensing his thoughts, Thomas opened fevered eyes. "Are you leaving me?" "No," Eagle Eye replied, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "I will stay until you are stronger." He crushed herbs from his pouch between two stones, mixed them with water, and helped Thomas drink the bitter medicine. The boy grimaced but swallowed obediently. "This belonged to my father," Eagle Eye explained, showing Thomas the decorated pouch. "It carries powerful medicine and protection." "Like magic?" Thomas asked, childlike curiosity momentarily overcoming his fear and illness. "Like prayers," Eagle Eye corrected. "The spirits listen when we speak with respect." Thomas's eyes grew heavy as the herbs began to work. "My ma prayed too. Different words, same idea." Eagle Eye nodded. Many paths to the same mountain. As Thomas drifted to sleep, Eagle Eye stepped away to scan their back trail. In the distance, dust rose. Riders moving fast. Comanche scouts, perhaps following Thomas's trail from his homestead. They would reach this spot by midday. Eagle Eye returned to the sleeping boy. His duty was clear: warn his people of the Comanche presence, yet leaving Thomas meant certain death for the child. Eagle Eye touched his medicine pouch, seeking guidance. Inside was a small carved eagle his son had made before illness took him. The memory of that loss settled the question. Working quickly, Eagle Eye fashioned a travois from branches and his blanket. They would leave this place before the riders arrived, but not toward his tribal lands. Instead, they would head east, toward the white settlement near Fort Buchanan. The journey would be dangerous, crossing territory claimed by multiple tribes and patrolled by white soldiers. As the sun climbed higher, Eagle Eye lifted the still sleeping Thomas onto the travois. The boy clutched his sack of treasures, even in sleep. "The path divides," Eagle Eye murmured in Apache. "I choose the one my father would understand." He removed a sacred eagle feather from his medicine pouch and placed it in the center of a stone cairn, a message any Apache would recognize. If his tribesmen tracked him, they would know he had chosen to protect the boy rather than abandon his mission. The gesture completed, Eagle Eye began pulling the travois eastward, his strong legs making good time despite the burden. Behind him, dust clouds grew larger as the riders approached. Eagle Eye touched his medicine pouch once more, drawing strength from the generations of warriors whose wisdom it contained. He had made his choice. Now he would face whatever consequences followed, as a warrior should. The fever broke by nightfall. Eagle Eye had pushed hard through the afternoon heat, putting distance between them and the pursuing riders. When they finally stopped in a small arroyo, Thomas was awake and alert enough to take water. "Did they follow us?" Thomas asked, eyes scanning the darkening landscape. "Yes," Eagle Eye replied honestly, "but we have confused them." He had crossed several rocky outcroppings where they would leave no tracks, doubled back across a shallow stream, and employed other Apache tricks to lose pursuers. Thomas nodded, accepting the warrior's skill without question. "How far to the fort?" 3 days, perhaps 4. Eagle Eye built a small fire, shielded from distant eyes by the arroyo walls. "We must be careful. This land has many dangers." As Eagle Eye prepared a simple meal of dried meat softened in hot water, Thomas rummaged through his sack. He withdrew a small wooden horse, carved with surprising detail. "Pa made this," Thomas said, running his finger along the flowing mane. "Said every boy needs a good horse." His voice caught. "He was making me a whole herd, one every birthday." Eagle Eye studied the carving. "Your father had skilled hands." "He was teaching me," Thomas said. "I only finished one. It's not very good." He reached into the sack again and produced a much cruder horse figure. Eagle Eye took it carefully. "It has strong legs, a good horse for long journeys." Thomas looked pleased at the assessment. "Do Apache boys have toys?" "Yes, toys for play but also for learning." Eagle Eye handed back the carved horse. "My son had a small bow before he could walk. By 5 summers, he could hit a pine cone at 20 paces. "You have a son?" Thomas asked. Eagle Eye's face grew solemn. The fever spirits took him 2 winters past. Thomas was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry," he finally said, with the simple directness of a child who understood loss. Eagle Eye nodded acknowledgement. "Sleep now. Tomorrow we walk far." But Thomas was not ready for sleep. "Will you teach me like you taught your son?" The question caught Eagle Eye by surprise. "Teach you what?" "To move quiet, to find water, Apache things." Thomas clutched his wooden horse. "I need to be stronger." Eagle Eye studied the boy's face, seeing determination beyond his years. "These are not things learned in one night." "I'm a fast learner," Thomas insisted. "Pa always said so." Eagle Eye considered the request. Teaching Thomas survival skills would improve their chances of reaching the fort, and the boy needed something to focus on besides his grief. "Very well," Eagle Eye agreed. "We begin tomorrow." Thomas smiled, for the first time since Eagle Eye had found him. It transformed his face, briefly revealing the child he had been before tragedy struck. That night, as Thomas slept, Eagle Eye kept watch. The boy whimpered in his sleep, caught in nightmares. Without waking him, Eagle Eye placed his hand gently on Thomas's shoulder. The touch seemed to calm the child. Eagle Eye looked up at the stars, the same stars that had guided his ancestors for countless generations. He had made his choice to help this boy, this child of his people's enemies. Yet sitting here in the quiet night, the decision felt right. "The spirits guide our feet when our eyes cannot see the path," his father had often said. Eagle Eye hoped the old wisdom was true, for the path ahead was hidden in darkness and danger. He touched his medicine pouch, then looked at Thomas, sleeping with his wooden horse clutched tight against his chest. 2 broken souls, joined by chance or perhaps by something more. The journey had only just begun. Dawn painted the desert in gold and amber as Eagle Eye roused Thomas. The boy rubbed sleep from his eyes but rose without complaint. "First lesson," Eagle Eye said, pointing to Thomas's footprints in the sand. "You walk too heavy. The earth remembers every step." Thomas frowned at his tracks. "How do I walk lighter?" "Watch," Eagle Eye demonstrated, moving across the sand with barely a trace. "Roll your foot from outside to inside. Feel the ground before you put weight down." Thomas tried, his first attempts clumsy, but improving with each step. "Like this?" Eagle Eye nodded. "Better. A warrior must move without being seen or heard." "I'm not a warrior," Thomas objected. "All who survive are warriors," Eagle Eye replied. "The desert does not care if you are a child." Throughout the morning as they traveled, Eagle Eye shared knowledge. He showed Thomas how to spot signs of water, certain birds, insects, types of vegetation. He explained which plants could be eaten and which brought sickness. When they paused at midday, Eagle Eye removed a smooth, oval stone from his pouch. Dark green with veins of white quartz, it fit perfectly in his palm. "This is my tracking stone," he explained, offering it to Thomas. "My father gave it to me when I was younger than you." Thomas accepted it reverently, feeling its cool weight. "What does it do?" "It remembers the path," Eagle Eye said. "When tracking game or enemies, I touch it to help my eyes see what others miss." Thomas studied the stone intently. "Does it have magic?" Eagle Eye smiled slightly. "The magic is in learning to see. The stone helps us remember to look carefully." He pointed to faint scratches on the desert floor nearby. "What made those marks?" Thomas squinted. "An animal?" "Yes, but which one?" Thomas shook his head, unsure. "Rabbit," Eagle Eye said. "See how the marks are close together, with the back feet landing ahead of the front. And there," he pointed to a barely visible depression, "it stopped to listen for danger." Eagle Eye guided Thomas's hand, still holding the tracking stone, to trace the trail. "Feel with your eyes, see with your fingers." Thomas concentrated, following the nearly invisible signs. "There, it went behind that bush." "Good." Eagle Eye nodded approvingly. "The stone helps you focus." As they continued their journey, a diamondback rattlesnake slithered across their path. Thomas froze in terror. "Be still," Eagle Eye cautioned quietly. "It warns us with its rattle. Respect its space, and it will not strike." The snake regarded them with unblinking eyes before sliding away into the brush. "I hate snakes," Thomas whispered once it had gone. Fear is natural, Eagle Eye said. But the snake follows its nature as we follow ours, neither good nor evil, simply alive. Thomas considered this. Pa killed every snake he found near our home. Near your home, that was wise, Eagle Eye acknowledged. But here, in the snake's home, we are visitors. The sun began its westward descent when Eagle Eye noticed dust on the horizon. He quickly guided Thomas into a rocky crevice. What is it? Thomas asked, sensing the tension. Riders. 3, maybe 4. Eagle Eye kept his voice calm despite his concern. They follow our trail. Thomas clutched his sack tighter. The ones who killed my family? Eagle Eye nodded grimly. They search for something. His eyes flickered to Thomas's sack, where the silver locket was hidden. Something they believe you have. Fear filled Thomas's eyes. Will they find us? Eagle Eye pressed the tracking stone into the boy's palm. Not today. Remember what I taught you about moving silently. He pointed to gathering storm clouds. And the sky spirits will help cover our tracks. The storm approached faster than Eagle Eye anticipated. The sky darkened to an ominous yellow, brown as dust clouds billowed on the horizon. We must find shelter, Eagle Eye said, scanning the landscape. There, he pointed to a cluster of boulders with a shallow overhang. That will shield us. They reached the rocks just as the wind began to howl. Eagle Eye positioned the travois to form a windbreak, securing it with stones. It will get worse before it passes, he warned as sand began to sting their faces. Thomas looked afraid but determined. What do? We wait, and we prepare. Eagle Eye began gathering brush to seal the gaps between the travois and the rock. Thomas opened his sack and pulled out a faded blue shawl with delicate embroidery around the edges. Ma's shawl, he explained. Will this help? Eagle Eye nodded, recognizing its value to the boy. It will cover the opening. Together they created a small shelter, using stones to anchor the shawl across the front of their refuge. Inside, the space was tight, forcing them to sit close together as the storm raged. The wind shrieked like angry spirits, driving sand against their shelter. Inside, Thomas traced the embroidered flowers on the shawl's edge. Ma made this when she was a girl, he said. Her ma taught her how. She was teaching my sister before. His voice trailed off. You had a sister? Eagle Eye asked gently. Thomas nodded. Little Sarah, she was only 3. His small face crumpled. They killed her too. Eagle Eye remained silent, allowing the boy's grief its voice. In Apache tradition, speaking of the dead helped their spirits find peace. Ma used to wrap this around both of us during storms, Thomas continued after a while. She'd tell stories until we weren't scared anymore. What stories did she tell? Eagle Eye asked. About angels watching over children, Thomas replied. And about her home in Pennsylvania, where there were green trees everywhere and lakes so big you couldn't see across them. The storm intensified, the wind's mournful howling punctuated by the clatter of debris against the rocks. Thomas unconsciously leaned closer to Eagle Eye. In my tribe, Eagle Eye said, we believe storms are the Earth Mother cleansing herself. The wind carries away that which no longer serves life. Like sweeping the floor? Thomas asked. Eagle Eye nodded. The dust returns to the earth. The rain follows to bring new growth. All things have purpose. Even bad things. Thomas's question held the weight of his recent tragedy. Eagle Eye considered his answer carefully. The storm does not think of itself as good or bad. It simply is. But from the storm comes change, and from change, new beginnings. The shawl fluttered against its stone anchors as a particularly strong gust threatened their shelter. Eagle Eye reached out to secure it, his hand brushing Thomas's as the boy did the same. Will you tell me an Apache story? Thomas asked. Like Ma would. Eagle Eye began the tale of first man and first woman, and how they brought order to the world after emerging from the underworld. As he spoke, he noticed Thomas relaxing, the ancient story working its medicine. When Eagle Eye finished, Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Your stories are different from Ma's, he finally said, but they feel the same somehow. All people seek to understand the mystery of life, Eagle Eye replied. Our stories are the maps we follow. The storm's fury began to subside, though fine dust still filtered through the smallest gaps in their shelter. Thomas held a corner of his mother's shawl to his cheek. "I think Ma would have liked you," he said softly, "even though you're Apache." Something shifted in Eagle Eye's heart at those simple words. He placed his hand on Thomas's shoulder. "When the storm passes, we will continue our journey, but first, I will teach you an Apache prayer for safe passage." Thomas nodded, still clutching his mother's shawl. "I'd like that." Morning revealed a transformed landscape. The storm had erased their tracks and reshaped the desert, burying some features while exposing others long hidden by sand. Eagle Eye emerged first, surveying their surroundings. The air was clear, the horizon sharp. He motioned for Thomas to join him. "The storm has given us protection," he explained. "Our trail is gone." Thomas carefully folded his mother's shawl and returned it to his sack. As he did, Eagle Eye spotted something half buried in the sand several paces from their shelter, a flash of color not natural to the desert. "Stay here," he instructed, approaching cautiously. He brushed away sand to reveal an arrow, not Apache make, but Comanche. Its shaft was painted with distinctive red and black bands, the fletching made from hawk feathers. Most telling was the arrowhead, metal, likely traded from white settlers. Eagle Eye examined the ground around it. No footprints remained after the storm, but the arrow's position told him enough. It had been planted deliberately, not shot, the tip driven into the ground at an angle pointing east, toward Fort Buchanan. "What is it?" Thomas called. Eagle Eye returned, showing him the arrow. "Comanche, a message." Thomas paled. "For us?" "Yes." Eagle Eye studied the arrow's markings. "This belongs to a warrior named Black Knife, a raid leader known for his cruelty." "How do you know his name?" "These markings." Eagle Eye pointed to notches carved into the shaft. "They tell of his deeds. Apache scouts learn to read such signs." Thomas swallowed hard. "What does the message say?" "That they know where we go, and they will be waiting." Eagle Eye looked toward the east. "They hunt you with great determination." "But why?" Thomas's voice cracked. "They already killed everyone. They burned everything." Eagle Eye's gaze fell to Thomas's sack. "Not everything. They seek something they believe you have." Thomas looked away, confirming Eagle Eye's suspicion. The boy was hiding something valuable. "Thomas," Eagle Eye said gently but firmly, "I cannot protect you if I do not know what they seek." The boy's shoulders slumped. "Pa said not to tell anyone. It was our secret." "Your father is with the spirits now," Eagle Eye reminded him, "and his enemies still hunt his son." After a long moment, Thomas nodded. "Not here," he whispered, "when we're safer." Eagle Eye accepted this compromise. "Then we must change our path. They expect us to take the direct route to the fort." He snapped the Comanche arrow in half and buried the pieces. "I will teach you how to read tracks and signs. The desert speaks to those who know its language." As they prepared to leave, Eagle Eye showed Thomas how different tribes made distinctive marks: Apache, Comanche, Navajo, white men. These boot prints, he pointed to faint impressions partially preserved beneath an overhang, cavalry soldiers from the fort. "And these?" Thomas asked, indicating different tracks nearby. "Moccasins. Comanche. See how they turn the foot slightly outward? Apache step straighter." Thomas absorbed the lesson eagerly. "Like a different language." "Yes, the language of the hunt." Eagle Eye handed him the tracking stone. "Keep this close. It will help your eyes see what is hidden." They set off in a new direction, northwest instead of east, Eagle Eye creating false trails at intervals to confuse any pursuers. He showed Thomas how to walk on rocky ground to leave no tracks, how to brush away signs of their passage. By midday, they reached a vantage point, overlooking a vast expanse of desert. In the distance, dust rose, riders moving fast along the direct route to the fort. "They hunt where they expect us to be," Eagle Eye explained. "We will go where they do not look." Thomas studied the distant riders, his young face solemn. "Will they give up?" Eagle Eye shook his head. "Not if what you carry is valuable enough." Thomas clutched his sack tighter. "It is," he whispered. "Pa said men would kill for it." "Then we must be more clever than those who hunt us," Eagle Eye replied. "And you must trust me with your secret soon." By late afternoon, they reached the entrance to a narrow canyon, a jagged split in the earth that few knew existed. Eagle Eye had discovered it years earlier while tracking a wounded deer. "This way," he said, guiding Thomas into the shadowed passage. "The canyon will hide us and lead us toward the fort by a different path." The walls rose steep on either side, streaked with layers of red, orange, and brown stone. The air was cooler here, a welcome relief after hours in the sun. "Stay close," Eagle Eye cautioned. "The path narrows ahead." Thomas followed obediently, one hand trailing along the canyon wall for balance. Suddenly, he stopped. "Look," he exclaimed, pointing to the rock face. Eagle Eye turned to see what had captured the boy's attention. There, painted on the smooth stone surface, were ancient images, handprints in red ochre, stick figures, hunting deer, spirals and symbols that had endured for countless generations. "Who made these?" Thomas asked, voice hushed with wonder. "The ancient ones," Eagle Eye replied. "They lived here long before Apache, before Comanche, before white men." Thomas studied the faded images. A line of human figures held hands in a chain. Above them, a sun symbol radiated warmth. "My teacher showed us pictures like these in a book," Thomas said. "She called them petroglyphs. The ancient ones spoke through these marks," Eagle Eye explained. "They tell stories of hunts, battles, and great journeys." Further along the canyon wall, darker images depicted conflict, figures with spears confronting others, zigzag lines representing discord. "Even then there was war," Thomas observed quietly. Eagle Eye nodded. "But see here," he pointed to another panel where the figures seemed to be offering gifts to each other. There was also peace. They continued deeper into the canyon, where the path began to climb steeply. Eagle Eye helped Thomas navigate the difficult terrain, showing him where to place his feet and which handholds were secure. "We must reach the upper ledge before dark," Eagle Eye explained. "It is safer to rest there." Thomas struggled with the climb, his small hands and feet searching for purchase on the rough stone. Eagle Eye remained patient, demonstrating each move. "Like this," he encouraged. "Feel the rock before trusting it with your weight." By sunset, they reached a wide ledge halfway up the canyon wall. The vantage point offered a clear view of both ends of the canyon while providing natural shelter beneath an overhanging rock. Eagle Eye helped Thomas settle in the protected space, then produced a small bundle of supple branches he had collected. "What are those for?" Thomas asked. "Protection," Eagle Eye replied, bending the branches into a small bow. He cut a piece of sinew from his supplies for the bowstring, then fashioned 3 small arrows. "For me?" Thomas's eyes widened. Eagle Eye nodded. "Every warrior needs a weapon. This is sized for your hands." He showed Thomas how to hold the bow, how to nock an arrow and draw the string. "Aim with your eye and your heart together," he instructed. "The arrow follows your intention." Thomas practiced the motions without releasing any arrows, his face serious with concentration. As darkness settled over the canyon, Eagle Eye performed a nighttime blessing, singing softly in Apache. Thomas watched, respectful of the unfamiliar ritual. "What does it mean?" he asked when Eagle Eye finished. "It asks the night spirits to watch over us while we sleep," Eagle Eye explained, "and to hide us from those with evil in their hearts." Thomas looked up at the stars visible in the narrow strip of sky above the canyon. "Do you think they hear you?" Eagle Eye followed the boy's gaze upward. "The stars are the eyes of our ancestors. They always watch." Thomas considered this. "Maybe Ma and Pa are up there too." "All who have walked the ghost trail look down upon those they loved," Eagle Eye affirmed. "Your parents watch over you now, just as my son watches over me." Thomas clutched his new bow. "I hope they're proud." "They see your courage," Eagle Eye said. "How could they not be proud?" Dawn had barely broken when Eagle Eye sensed they were not alone. He placed a cautioning hand on Thomas's shoulder, signaling for silence. The boy froze, clutching his new bow. 2 shadows detached from the canyon wall, Apache warriors with painted faces and weapons ready. Eagle Eye recognized them immediately. Running Fox and Stone Hand, scouts from his own tribe. "Brother." Running Fox greeted in Apache, his eyes never leaving Thomas. "We followed your sign at the stone cairn." "You have strayed far from your mission," Stone Hand added, his tone carrying accusation. Eagle Eye stood protectively near Thomas. The mission changed when I found this boy. Running Fox circled closer, studying Thomas with open suspicion. A white child. The enemy's blood. Thomas shrank back, but held his ground, the small bow trembling in his hands. "Not this child," Eagle Eye said firmly. "He is a survivor. Comanche raiders killed his family." Stone Hand's expression darkened. "Comanche? You are certain?" Eagle Eye nodded. "I found their arrow, Black Knife's markings." The two scouts exchanged meaningful glances. Running Fox spoke, his voice lower. "Black Knife's band attacked our hunting party 2 days ago, 3 warriors dead." This news disturbed Eagle Eye deeply. They move with purpose across many territories. It is unusual. "They hunt something valuable," Stone Hand said, looking pointedly at Thomas and his sack of belongings. Eagle Eye met his tribesman's suspicious gaze steadily. "The boy will tell his story when he is ready. For now, he is under my protection." Tension hung in the air like storm clouds. Thomas, though unable to understand their words, clearly sensed the conflict. He moved closer to Eagle Eye, eyes darting between the 3 warriors. Stone Hand reached into his pouch and withdrew a small pipe carved from red stone, decorated with eagle feathers, a peace pipe used in tribal councils. "We will hear your words with open hearts," he said, offering the pipe to Eagle Eye. "But you must speak true about why you abandon your brothers for this white child." Eagle Eye accepted the pipe, recognizing its significance. This was not merely a smoking ritual, but a sacred act that bound speakers to honesty. "Thomas," Eagle Eye said, switching to Spanish, "these are my tribesmen. They question why I help you." Thomas swallowed hard. "Will they make you leave me?" "No," Eagle Eye assured him, "but we must share our journey with them." Eagle Eye prepared the pipe with a small amount of tobacco from Stone Hand's pouch. As he lit it, he began speaking in Apache, telling of finding Thomas, the broken water vessel, the sack of memories, and the Comanche pursuit. "The boy carries something they want," he explained, "something they killed his family to obtain. I believe their raids on both Apache and white settlements are connected." The pipe passed from Eagle Eye to Running Fox, then to Stone Hand. When offered to Thomas, Eagle Eye explained the significance. "It means peace between us," he told the boy, "a promise of truth and help." Thomas hesitantly accepted the pipe but did not smoke it, instead touching it respectfully to his forehead, as he had seen the others do. The gesture impressed the Apache scouts. Running Fox spoke directly to Thomas in halting Spanish. "You have courage, small one. The child can travel with us," Stone Hand decided. "The tribal council must hear of Black Knife's movements." "We go to Fort Buchanan," Eagle Eye clarified. "The boy has family there." Stone Hand frowned but nodded. "We will guide you part of the way. There is a safer path through Apache territory." As they prepared to leave, Thomas whispered to Eagle Eye, "Can we trust them?" Eagle Eye watched his tribesmen gathering their weapons. "The peace pipe is sacred. Their word is given." "Like a promise to God?" Thomas asked. Eagle Eye nodded. "Yes, but more than words, a bond between warriors that cannot be broken." Thomas considered this, then squared his small shoulders. "Then I will be a warrior too." That night, camped beneath a limestone overhang, Thomas finally decided to share his secret. The 2 Apache scouts had scouted ahead, leaving Eagle Eye and the boy alone for the first time since their meeting. "I need to show you something," Thomas whispered, glancing nervously in the direction the scouts had gone. Eagle Eye nodded encouragingly. "It is time." Thomas reached into his sack and carefully withdrew the silver locket Eagle Eye had glimpsed before. Oval-shaped and intricately engraved with flowers, it hung from a delicate chain. "It was Mars," Thomas explained, his small fingers tracing the patterns. "But what's inside is what Pa put there." He clicked open the locket. Instead of a portrait or lock of hair, it contained a tightly folded piece of paper. Thomas removed it with great care and unfolded it, revealing a hand-drawn map. "Pa was a surveyor," Thomas said. "He found something in the mountains, something valuable." Eagle Eye studied the map. Though he couldn't read the English notations, he recognized the terrain, a mountain range to the north of Apache lands. "Silver," Thomas said. "A whole mountain of it," Pa said. "Enough to make us rich." Understanding dawned on Eagle Eye, and others learned of this. Thomas nodded solemnly. A man came to our home, offered Pa money for the map. When Pa refused, the man threatened him. His voice dropped to a whisper. A week later, the Comanche came. This man, Eagle Eye asked, he had dealings with the Comanche. Pa said he was a bad man who paid Indians to do his dirty work. Thomas looked down. I heard Ma and Pa talking when they thought I was asleep. The man's name was Jackson. Pa said he'd pay anyone, white or Indian, to get what he wanted. Eagle Eye's expression hardened. Men like this Jackson were known to him, traders who armed different tribes against each other and against settlers, profiting from conflict and death. The night of the raid, Thomas continued, Ma hid me in the root cellar. She put this around my neck and made me promise never to show anyone. Tears welled in his eyes. I heard everything, the shooting, the screaming, Ma. Eagle Eye placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder, allowing him time to compose himself. When it was quiet, I came out. They were gone, but they'd taken everything of value. They didn't find me because they didn't know about the cellar under the floor. Thomas clutched the locket. They'll keep looking for this, won't they? Yes, Eagle Eye answered honestly, as long as they believe you have it. Running Fox emerged from the darkness, his expression making it clear he had heard enough to understand. This map, he said in Apache to Eagle Eye, it is on our tribal lands. Eagle Eye nodded grimly. The Silver Mountain belongs to the Apache. Running Fox's eyes gleamed. Our people could use such wealth to buy weapons, to defend ourselves against both Comanche and white soldiers. It is not ours to take, Eagle Eye reminded him. The boy's father is dead, Running Fox countered. Who does it belong to, if not those who control the land? Stonehand appeared beside them, having circled back from his scouting. What discussion is this? Thomas, sensing the tension though not understanding the Apache words, clutched the locket protectively. Eagle Eye placed himself subtly between the boy and his tribesman. The child carries a map to a silver mine, Running Fox explained, on Apache land. Stonehand's eyes widened. This is what Black Knife seeks? This is why they raid our hunting parties? A white man named Jackson likely hired them, Eagle Eye explained. He wants the map the boy carries. Stonehand studied Thomas with new interest. The tribal council must see this map. With such wealth, we could buy many rifles. I promise to take him to the fort, Eagle Eye said firmly. Your loyalty should be to your people, Stonehand replied, his tone hardening. Thomas, following none of this exchange but sensing its importance, looked up at Eagle Eye with trust and fear mingled in his eyes. What are they saying? He asked softly. Eagle Eye placed a protective hand on Thomas's shoulder. They believe the map shows land belonging to the Apache, he explained in Spanish. They think it should go to their tribe. Thomas considered this, his young face serious beyond his years. What do you think? Morning brought no resolution to the tension. Eagle Eye had stood firm in his decision to help Thomas reach Fort Buchanan, while his tribesmen clearly coveted the map for the Apache Nation. An uneasy truce settled over the group as they traveled. By midday, they reached the banks of the San Pedro River, swollen from recent mountain rains. What was normally a shallow crossing had become a churning, muddy torrent. We must cross here, Stonehand said, pointing downstream. The fort lies 2 days' journey beyond. Thomas stared at the rushing water with undisguised fear. I can't swim, he admitted quietly to Eagle Eye. Eagle Eye surveyed the river, measuring its speed and width. We will build a small raft for you and our supplies. The Apache scouts gathered fallen cottonwood branches while Eagle Eye prepared for the crossing. From his medicine pouch, he withdrew a single eagle feather, larger and more magnificent than those adorning the peace pipe. Its shaft was painted with symbols in blue and red, its barbs immaculately preserved. What's that? Thomas asked. My spirit feather, Eagle Eye explained. Given to me by my grandfather when I became a warrior, it carries powerful protection for dangerous journeys. He held the feather toward the sun, then moved it in a circular motion above his head while singing a low melodic prayer in Apache. Even Running Fox and Stonehand paused in their work, showing respect for the ritual. The water spirits are strong and unpredictable, Eagle Eye told Thomas. This asks for their permission to cross their domain. Thomas watched, fascinated. Does it work? It reminds us to respect the river's power, Eagle Eye replied. That is the beginning of safety. When the makeshift raft was completed, branches lashed together with strips of rawhide, Eagle Eye secured Thomas's precious sack to it, along with their few supplies. "I will cross first," Stone Hand announced, "to secure the far bank." The others watched as he entered the water, moving with practiced skill against the current. Halfway across, he momentarily disappeared beneath the surface, then emerged several yards downstream, fighting his way to the opposite shore. "The current is strong," he called back. "Take care." Running Fox went next, using a long branch to help maintain his balance against the push of the water. He too struggled but reached the far side safely. Eagle Eye turned to Thomas. "You will lie on the raft. I will guide it across." Thomas looked terrified but nodded bravely. Eagle Eye helped him onto the raft, then placed the spirit feather in the boy's hand. "Hold this," he instructed. "It will keep you safe." Eagle Eye pushed the raft into the shallows, holding its guide rope as he waded beside it. The cold water rose quickly to his waist, then his chest as they moved toward the deepest part. The current grabbed the raft, spinning it sideways despite Eagle Eye's efforts. Thomas clung to the lashed branches, the spirit feather clutched tightly in one small fist. "Don't let go," Eagle Eye called above the river's roar. Suddenly, the raft struck a submerged rock, cracking several of the branches. Thomas's sack slipped, its contents spilling into the churning water. The boy lunged for it, nearly falling from the disintegrating raft. "Leave it," Eagle Eye commanded, fighting to keep both Thomas and what remained of the raft from being swept downstream. "No," Thomas cried as his mother's shawl and the wooden horse his father had carved disappeared into the muddy torrent. Only his desperate grip on the sack itself saved it from the same fate. With a mighty effort, Eagle Eye pushed the damaged raft toward the far bank where his tribesmen waited. Running Fox waded out to help, grabbing Thomas while Stone Hand pulled Eagle Eye from the current's grip. They collapsed on the shore, exhausted and drenched. Thomas shook with cold and shock, tears mixing with river water on his face. "My things," he sobbed. "Ma's shawl, Pa's carving." Eagle Eye placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You still have your life. And this." He pointed to the sack, where the silver locket remained safe. Thomas looked up, suddenly remembering. "Your feather. I dropped your spirit feather." Eagle Eye glanced back at the raging river, then shook his head. "The water spirits accepted my offering. It belongs to them now." Dawn broke with a harsh discovery. Eagle Eye woke to find Thomas shaking him urgently, fear etched across the boy's face. "It's gone," Thomas whispered. "The locket. Someone took it while we slept." Eagle Eye was instantly alert, scanning their makeshift camp. Stone Hand sat by the small fire, face impassive. Running Fox was nowhere to be seen. "When did you last have it?" Eagle Eye asked. "I put it back in my sack after we dried our things," Thomas replied. "I'm sure of it." Eagle Eye turned to Stone Hand, speaking in Apache. "Where is Running Fox?" Stone Hand's expression revealed nothing. "He left before first light, said he was scouting ahead." Eagle Eye knew immediately what had happened. He took the map. "The silver belongs to the Apache," Stone Hand replied without denying the accusation. "Running Fox does what he believes is right for our people." Eagle Eye's anger rose like a storm cloud. "By stealing from a child? By betraying his word given over the peace pipe?" "The boy will reach his fort safely," Stone Hand countered. "What use has he for a silver mine? His family is dead." Thomas watched the exchange with growing distress. "What's happening? What are they saying?" Eagle Eye switched to Spanish. "Running Fox has taken your locket. He has gone to bring the map to our tribe." Thomas's face crumpled, but it was Ma's, the only thing I had left of her. Eagle Eye placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I am sorry, Thomas. This dishonors us." Stone Hand stood, his posture tense. "You have chosen the white boy over your own people, Eagle Eye. The council will hear of this. They will also hear of how Running Fox broke his sacred oath." Eagle Eye replied coldly, "How he stole from a child who had already lost everything." "The map leads to Apache land," Stone Hand insisted. "The silver is ours by right." "And what of honor? What of the warrior's path?" Eagle Eye challenged. "Is this how Apache warriors behave, taking from the weakest while they sleep?" Stone Hand had no answer for this. After a long moment, he gathered his weapons. I must return to the tribe. Running Fox will have reached the eastern passes by now. You cannot catch him." "I will not try," Eagle Eye said. "My path leads to the fort with Thomas." Stonehand's expression softened slightly. "You were always stubborn, brother. I hope your compassion for this boy does not bring disaster to our people." "A people who abandon their principles have already found disaster," Eagle Eye replied. Stonehand nodded once, acknowledging the rebuke. "May the spirits guide your path." With that, he turned and disappeared into the morning mist. Thomas watched him go, then looked up at Eagle Eye. "Will you go after the locket?" Eagle Eye shook his head. "It is more important to get you safely to the fort. The map was your father's legacy, but your life is more precious." "But your tribe," Thomas protested. "Won't you be in trouble for helping me instead of getting the map back?" Eagle Eye began gathering their few remaining possessions. Sometimes a warrior must choose between what his tribe wants and what is right. Thomas considered this. "It's my fault, if I hadn't brought the map." "No," Eagle Eye interrupted firmly. "The fault lies with those who value silver more than honor. Never blame yourself for the greed of others." As they prepared to continue their journey, Thomas stopped suddenly. "I remember it," he said. "The map. Pa made me memorize it in case something happened." Eagle Eye looked at him with surprise. "You can redraw it?" Thomas nodded. "Not as good as Pa, but I know the marks and the way." His young face hardened with determination. "But I won't, not for people who steal." Eagle Eye felt a surge of pride for the boy's spirit. A wise decision. Some knowledge is best kept close until the right time. "When will I know the right time?" Thomas asked. Eagle Eye shouldered their meager supplies. "When you find people who value you more than what you can give them." They set off toward the fort, now just two again as they had begun. Behind them, the river continued its relentless journey, carrying away the past. Ahead, uncertainty waited, but they would face it together. The day grew hotter as they traveled, making progress slow. Thomas, despite his determination, was still a young boy with limited endurance. By mid-afternoon, Eagle Eye knew they needed shelter from the punishing sun. "There," he pointed to a rocky outcropping on the mountainside ahead. "Caves where we can rest until evening." Thomas nodded gratefully, his face flushed from heat and exertion. They climbed steadily, using game trails that zigzagged up the slope. Eagle Eye helped Thomas over the steeper sections, impressed by the boy's resilience. The cave entrance was partially hidden behind scrub brush, a natural defense that had made it a favorite refuge for Apache hunters for generations. Inside, the temperature dropped immediately, the stone walls cooled to the touch. "It's like an ice house," Thomas marveled, running his hand along the smooth rock. "Water seeps through the mountain," Eagle Eye explained, pointing to mineral deposits glistening on the ceiling. "It keeps the air cool." He arranged their few belongings, then began gathering materials for a small fire near the entrance where the smoke could escape. Thomas watched intently, trying to memorize each step. As Eagle Eye worked, he withdrew a knife from his belt, different from his utility blade. This one had an antler handle, intricately carved with symbols, and a blade that gleamed with a distinctive pattern of folded metal. "That's beautiful," Thomas said, eyes wide. Eagle Eye nodded. "My father made it. The blade came from a Spanish sword, but he reshaped it in the Apache way." He handed it carefully to Thomas. "Feel its balance." Thomas accepted the knife reverently, surprised by its perfect weight distribution. "It feels alive somehow." "A good blade becomes part of the warrior who carries it," Eagle Eye explained. "My father carried this through many battles. When he walked the ghost trail, it came to me." "My pa had a pocket knife," Thomas said. "Nothing special like this. He was going to teach me to whittle when I got older." His voice caught slightly. "Now I'll never learn." Eagle Eye took the knife back gently. "I can teach you, different style perhaps, but the principles are the same." Thomas looked up hopefully. "Really?" Eagle Eye nodded, selecting a piece of softwood from their kindling pile. "Watch first, then try." As the afternoon shadows lengthened, Eagle Eye demonstrated basic knife techniques, guiding Thomas's small hands with patient instruction. The boy proved a quick study, his natural dexterity making up for lack of strength. "My son was learning these same skills when he was taken by fever," Eagle Eye said quietly as Thomas practiced. He was much like you, quick to learn, brave of heart. Thomas paused his work. What was his name? Swift Deer, Eagle Eye replied. Because from the time he could walk, he was always running. Thomas considered this. Do Apache names mean something? Eagle Eye nodded. They speak of a quality or an event. My name came from my ability to spot game others missed. What would my Apache name be? Thomas asked. Eagle Eye studied him thoughtfully. Perhaps Strong Heart, for your courage in the face of great loss. Thomas smiled, pleased with the suggestion. I like that better than Thomas. As evening approached, Eagle Eye grew alert, sensing movement outside the cave. He motioned for Thomas to stay back, knife ready as he moved silently to the entrance. He returned moments later, tension eased. Deer, a good sign. Does that mean we're safe? Thomas asked. It means nothing hunts nearby, Eagle Eye clarified. Deer would not graze if predators were present. Thomas nodded, absorbing this woodland wisdom. I've been thinking about the map, he said after a while, about Running Fox taking it. Eagle Eye waited, letting the boy find his words. Pa always said a man's character shows in what he does when nobody's watching, Thomas continued. Running Fox didn't know I could remember the map. And what does that tell you? Eagle Eye asked. That some treasures can't be stolen, Thomas replied with unexpected wisdom. The ones you keep inside. Eagle Eye nodded, pride warming his chest. You learn quickly, Strong Heart. Thomas grinned at the use of his Apache name. Tomorrow we'll reach the fort. Yes, Eagle Eye confirmed. But we must be vigilant. The last stretch is often the most dangerous. I'm not scared, Thomas said, holding up the small wood piece he'd been carving, a crude but recognizable horse. Not with you teaching me. They left the cave before dawn, moving through the landscape like shadows. Eagle Eye sensed danger on the wind, an instinct honed through years as a scout. The fort was less than a day's journey now, but the most exposed terrain lay ahead. Stay close, he whispered to Thomas. Step only where I step. They descended from the mountain refuge into a broad valley carpeted with tall grass, beautiful but treacherous, offering little cover. Eagle Eye chose their path carefully, using scattered mesquite thickets for concealment. Midway across the valley, Thomas suddenly stopped. Listen, he breathed. Eagle Eye froze, hearing what the boy had detected, the soft jingle of metal, perhaps bridle bits or weapons. He pulled Thomas into the nearest thicket, their bodies pressed flat against the earth. Moments later, 4 Comanche warriors appeared on the ridge they had just descended. Even at a distance, Eagle Eye recognized the distinctive headdress of the leader, Black Knife himself. They've tracked us, Eagle Eye whispered. They must have found our trail at the river crossing. Thomas's face paled, but his voice remained steady. What do we do? Eagle Eye assessed their options. The Comanche had horses. They were on foot. Running would mean certain capture. Fighting 4 warriors alone would likely end in death. We must hide, then circle back toward the mountain, he decided. There are paths too narrow for horses. As they prepared to move, Thomas reached into his sack and withdrew a small brass object, a pocket compass with a hinged lid. Pa's compass, he explained. It might help us find our way back. Eagle Eye had seen such devices used by white scouts. Show me how it works. Thomas opened the lid, revealing the compass face. The needle always points north, he explained. Pa said if you know where north is, you can find your way anywhere. The Comanche voices grew louder. They had found fresh tracks. Eagle Eye made a quick decision. We separate, he whispered. I will lead them away. You use the compass to go east toward the fort. Fear flashed across Thomas's face. No, I won't leave you. You must, Eagle Eye insisted. This is why I taught you the desert lessons. Thomas clutched the compass tightly. But what about you? I am Apache, Eagle Eye replied with quiet confidence. This is my land. I will find you. Reluctantly, Thomas nodded. Eagle Eye showed him exactly which direction to go, then prepared to create a diversion. But before they could separate, a war cry split the air. They had been spotted. Run, Eagle Eye commanded, pushing Thomas toward a dry wash that offered their only cover. They sprinted across the open ground, arrows whistling past them. They reached the wash and slid down its embankment, just as the Comanche riders crested the nearest rise. "This way," Eagle Eye directed, leading Thomas along the dry stream bed. They ran until the wash narrowed, becoming too constricted for horses. Behind them, they heard the Comanche dismounting, continuing the pursuit on foot. At a bend in the wash, Eagle Eye stopped. "You continue alone," he told Thomas. "I will hold them here." "No," Thomas protested. "They'll kill you." "A warrior does what he must," Eagle Eye replied, drawing his knife. "The compass will guide you. Do not stop until you reach the fort." Tears filled Thomas's eyes. "I can't leave you." Eagle Eye grasped the boy's shoulder. "You can. You must. Your father would expect it." Thomas swallowed hard, then did something unexpected. He pressed the compass into Eagle Eye's hand. "Then take this, so you can find your way back to me." Before Eagle Eye could respond, the boy darted forward and embraced him fiercely. Then, showing courage beyond his years, Thomas continued down the wash alone. Eagle Eye tucked the compass into his belt, then turned to face the approaching Comanche. He would make his stand here, giving Thomas time to escape. Drawing his father's knife, he prepared for battle. Black Knife appeared first, a tall, powerfully built warrior, with face paint signifying many kills. 3 others flanked him, all armed with war clubs and knives. "Apache dog," Black Knife growled in trade language. "Where is the boy? Where is the silver map?" Eagle Eye did not answer. Instead, he launched himself at the Comanche leader with the ferocity of a mountain lion, his father's blade flashing in the sunlight. Thomas ran until his lungs burned. Following the dry wash, he eventually reached its end, where it opened into a broad plain. In the distance, he could see wooden structures, the outskirts of the settlement near Fort Buchanan. He paused, torn between his escape to safety and concern for Eagle Eye. The sounds of combat had faded behind him, leaving only uncertainty. Taking a deep breath, Thomas made the hardest decision of his young life. He continued toward the settlement. The sun was setting when Thomas stumbled into the clearing before the first buildings. His appearance, a ragged, exhausted boy emerging from the wilderness, caused immediate alarm among the settlers. "Indians!" a woman cried, assuming he'd fled an attack. "Ring the alarm!" Men with rifles appeared from doorways as Thomas collapsed in the dirt road. A stocky man with a grey beard approached cautiously. "Boy, where'd you come from? Are there Apaches behind you?" "Please," Thomas gasped. "My friend, he needs help. The Comanche." "Comanche?" The man looked confused. "There's no Comanche in these parts." A crowd gathered as Thomas tried to explain. "They killed my family, burned our homestead. An Apache warrior saved me. He's fighting them back there." Skeptical murmurs rippled through the crowd. "An Apache helping a white boy? Not likely," someone scoffed. "It's true," Thomas insisted desperately. "His name is Eagle Eye. He protected me, taught me to survive. Please, we have to help him." An older woman pushed through the crowd, studying Thomas intently. "What's your name, child?" "Thomas Mitchell," he replied. "My pa was James Mitchell, the surveyor." The woman's hand flew to her mouth. "James and Mary's boy." She turned to the bearded man. "Samuel, this is my sister's child." The revelation sent a shock through the gathered settlers. The woman, Thomas's aunt Sarah, embraced him tearfully while Samuel, her husband, ordered men to fetch the doctor. "The Mitchell place was raided weeks ago," Samuel explained to the others. "We thought everyone was killed." Inside her small cabin, Sarah tended to Thomas's injuries while he recounted his ordeal. The raid, Eagle Eye finding him, their journey, and the final confrontation. "He saved me," Thomas repeated. "We have to send help." Samuel shook his head. "Son, no one's riding into Comanche territory after dark, especially not to save an Apache." "But he's not just any Apache," Thomas protested. "He gave up everything to protect me." Sarah opened a large family Bible on the table, turning to pages where family records were kept. "Thomas, your mother was my only sister. We thought we'd lost you all." Her finger traced the family tree. "See, here's your name, written in your mother's hand." Thomas stared at the familiar handwriting, tears welling in his eyes. The Bible represented everything he'd lost: family, home, belonging. Yet Eagle Eye had given him a chance to reconnect with this part of his heritage. "Aunt Sarah," he said firmly, "Eagle Eye is family too. He's been like a father to me." Samuel and Sarah exchanged troubled glances. "Thomas," his aunt said gently, "I know you're grateful, but an Apache warrior isn't." She was interrupted by commotion outside. Thomas rushed to the window to see a bloodied figure limping into the settlement, Eagle Eye, wounded but alive, supported by 2 armed settlers. "Don't shoot him," Thomas cried, running outside despite his aunt's protests. The settlement was in an uproar. Men had rifles trained on Eagle Eye, while women hurried children indoors. Eagle Eye stood proudly despite his wounds, facing the hostile crowd with dignity. "He's with me." Thomas pushed through to stand beside the warrior. "He saved my life." The settlers muttered suspiciously, fingers tight on triggers. Samuel stepped forward. "Boy, get away from that savage. He's Apache." "No," Thomas replied defiantly. "He's Eagle Eye. He fought 4 Comanche warriors to protect me. He carried me through the desert. He taught me to survive." He faced the crowd. "I won't let you hurt him." Dr. Wilson, the settlement physician, assessed Eagle Eye's wounds. "He's lost blood, needs tending." "Not in my house," someone called. Thomas stood his ground. "Then I'm not staying either." Sarah approached slowly, her family Bible still in hand. She studied Eagle Eye, then looked at her nephew's determined face. "The good book says I was a stranger and you took me in," she said quietly. "Thomas says this man saved him. That deserves Christian charity at the very least." 3 days passed. Eagle Eye's wounds, though serious, began to heal under Dr. Wilson's reluctant care. The settlement remained wary of the Apache warrior, but Thomas's unwavering loyalty and Sarah's Christian charity created a fragile space of acceptance. On the 4th morning, Thomas found Eagle Eye sitting outside the small shed where he'd been permitted to recuperate. "You're leaving," Thomas said. It wasn't a question. Eagle Eye nodded. "My path leads back to my people." Thomas sat beside him, shoulders slumped. "I knew you wouldn't stay." "The Apache need to be warned about Black Knife's band," Eagle Eye explained, "and about the silver map that Running Fox took." "What will happen when both sides know about the silver?" Thomas asked. Eagle Eye's expression grew solemn. "Conflict, most likely. Silver makes men forget wisdom." They sat in silence for a moment, each contemplating the future. Finally, Thomas spoke. "Will I ever see you again?" "Our paths diverge," Eagle Eye replied gently. "You have found your mother's family. This is where you belong." Tears welled in Thomas's eyes. "But you're my family too." Eagle Eye reached into his medicine pouch and withdrew several strands of colored sinew, red, black, white, and blue. "Among my people, we have a way to maintain connection across distance." Thomas watched as Eagle Eye's nimble fingers began weaving the strands together in an intricate pattern. "This is called a friendship bracelet by white people," Eagle Eye explained. "But for Apache, it is more sacred. It connects spirits across the ghost trail itself." As he worked, Eagle Eye taught Thomas the meaning of each color: red for strength, black for the unknown journey, white for truth, and blue for the sky that watches over all. The pattern formed a zigzag that represented the mountain range where they had traveled together. "The weaving must be done while speaking truth from the heart," Eagle Eye continued, his fingers never pausing. "So I tell you now, Thomas Mitchell, called Strongheart in Apache, you have the courage of a true warrior. Your father and mother would be proud of the son they raised." Thomas wiped away tears as Eagle Eye completed a second identical bracelet. The warrior tied one around Thomas's wrist, then held out the other. "Will you tie mine?" he asked. Thomas nodded, carefully securing the bracelet around Eagle Eye's wrist. "I won't forget what you taught me," he promised, "about tracking and survival, and being brave. And I will remember how a small boy showed an old warrior that courage comes in many forms." Eagle Eye replied. "These bracelets connect us. When you feel alone, touch it and know I am thinking of you." Thomas reached into his sack, much emptier now, and withdrew his carved wooden horse. "Take this," he said, "so you won't forget me." Eagle Eye accepted the simple carving reverently. "I will keep it close always." From the main house, Sarah appeared, watching their exchange with mixed emotions. She had come to understand her nephew's attachment to the Apache, even as she feared its implications. "The settlement council has decided," she called. "They're granting safe passage as thanks for saving Thomas." Eagle Eye nodded acknowledgement. "I will leave at dawn." That evening, Thomas refused to leave Eagle Eye's side. They spoke late into the night, the warrior sharing final lessons and stories of the Apache way. Thomas soaked up every word, memorizing them like precious treasures. "In the spring, look for the first blossoming of the desert lily," Eagle Eye instructed. "Remember to thank the plant for its beauty and the bees for their work." "I will," Thomas promised. "And when thunder comes, do not hide indoors as white people do. Stand in the doorway and listen to the sky. Spirits speak." Dawn came too quickly. The settlement stirred as Eagle Eye prepared to depart. Samuel provided basic supplies, a grudging gesture of respect, while Sarah offered a small parcel of cornbread. The final goodbye was private, away from curious eyes. Eagle Eye knelt to meet Thomas at eye level. "The path divides here," he said softly, "but the trail of the heart never ends." Thomas threw his arms around the warrior's neck, holding tight. "Thank you for finding me," he whispered. Eagle Eye returned the embrace. "No, Strongheart, thank you for finding me." 1 year later, the settlement had grown. New cabins dotted the landscape, and Fort Buchanan had expanded its walls. The silver mine remained undiscovered by white settlers. Whatever Running Fox had done with the map, it had not led to its exploitation. Thomas had changed too. No longer the frightened boy dragging a sack through the desert, he had grown taller and stronger. He lived with Aunt Sarah and Uncle Samuel, attending the settlement school and helping with chores, but he was not like the other children. Each morning, Thomas rose before dawn to greet the sun as Eagle Eye had taught him. He kept a small collection of desert plants, learning their medicinal properties. The colorful bracelet never left his wrist, though it had faded and frayed with time. "Thomas," Sarah called one spring morning, "Mr. Johnson is here with the trading wagons. Come help unload." The trading caravan arrived monthly, bringing supplies and occasional Apache traders under carefully negotiated terms. Thomas hurried to the wagons, always watching for familiar faces among the Apache. Eagle Eye never came. Thomas helped distribute goods, his Apache language skills, carefully maintained and practiced in private, making him unexpectedly useful during these exchanges. The Apache traders regarded him with curiosity, this white boy who spoke their tongue with the accent of the mountain bands. Later that afternoon, Thomas wandered to his special place, a small ridge overlooking the settlement where he often went to think. There, tucked into a crevice in his favorite sitting rock, he found it, a single eagle feather, its shaft painted with familiar blue and red markings. Thomas's heart raced as he gently lifted the feather. It was a message, Apache style. Eagle Eye had been here. Scanning the distant hills, Thomas saw nothing but knew he was being watched. He raised the feather in acknowledgement, then pressed it to his heart. That evening, Thomas sat with his aunt as she read from the family Bible. She had noticed the eagle feather tucked carefully into his shirt, but chose not to comment. "You miss him still," she said instead, closing the Bible. Thomas nodded. "Every day." Sarah sighed. "I've never understood it, how that Apache became so important to you, but I've seen how you've changed this past year." "How have I changed?" Thomas asked. "You walk differently. Quiet, like him. You notice things others miss." She smiled faintly. "You've taught the younger children to respect the desert instead of fear it." Thomas touched his bracelet. "Eagle Eye said we're all connected to the land, no matter where we come from." Sarah placed her hand over his. "Your mother would be proud of the young man you're becoming, different perhaps than she imagined, but strong in ways that matter." The next morning, Thomas rose early and hiked to the settlement's edge. There, he carefully arranged stones in a pattern Eagle Eye would recognize, a sign meaning, "I am well." 2 days later, he found his stone message rearranged into a new pattern, "I watch over you." The settlement continued to grow. Thomas took on a unique role as he matured. Unofficial liaison with the local Apache bands. His understanding of their ways and language bridged gaps that guns and suspicion had created. He kept Eagle Eye's teachings alive, passing them to other children in the settlement. "The desert is not our enemy," he would explain. "It's our teacher." On quiet nights, Thomas would sit beneath the stars, touching the faded bracelet on his wrist. Sometimes he thought he could feel it warm slightly, as if its twin, worn by a warrior in distant mountains, was being touched at the same moment. The silver mine was eventually found, not through maps but through the natural course of expansion. By then, treaties had been signed. The Apache received payment for the land, though far less than its worth. Not ideal, but better than the bloodshed that might have been. Thomas kept the eagle feather his entire life. Years later, as a respected man known for his fair dealings with both settlers and native peoples, he would tell the story of being found in the desert by an Apache warrior. "He taught me that courage isn't about being fearless," Thomas would say, "but about finding your path when all seems lost." And somewhere in the mountains, an aging warrior named Eagle Eye would tell his grandchildren about a brave boy who dragged a sack of memories through the desert and whose strong heart helped heal two broken worlds.